We have checked out a lot of motorcycles this year. Everything from electric cruisers to high-powered, insanely expensive hyper nakeds and everything in between. I mean, we even went up to Janus's headquarters and checked out the Halcyon 250, the 450, and basically their entire lineup of motorcycles, because this really kind of has been the year of the Janus for good or ill. Basically, if Time Magazine was gonna have a motorcycle of the year, it'd probably end up being the Janus because it's the one that most people talked about. But it is officially time for me to go through all of the motorcycles that we've checked out on the channel this year and set them up into a rough tier list and determine my bike of the year. Now, the way that this works is I look at every motorcycle that I have ridden in the past year, and it doesn't matter whether or not it's actually from this year. I've checked out bikes from the late 90s all the way up to bikes from 2026. So anything that I've ridden within the calendar year of 2025 is eligible to be bike of the year. And we're gonna dive right in with the F tier, and there is only one motorcycle that I decided to put in here. And if you've watched any of the recent videos, you already know which one this is. It is the BMW R1250 RS. It's the only one here because it is so boring. It's officially my least favorite bike I've ridden this year, and quite possibly my least favorite bike ever. Now, as we move on to the D tier, I want to remind you that it's basically impossible to find a bad motorcycle these days. They're all really competent. And just because I put a bike in D tier just means it doesn't work for me. I say that because I'm starting out D tier with a motorcycle that I actually kind of enjoyed when I rode it, but I completely forgot I rode it this year. And that was the Triumph Daytona 660. And if I forgot I rode a motorcycle, that does not bode well for that bike. I actually had to go back and rewatch my video to remind myself all about it. It's basically if Triumph tried to make a Honda CBR 650R. It kind of even looks similar, if we're being honest. Joining it in the D tier, it's the Motomorini Escape 700. This one barely escaped the F tier. It's got a really boring motor, but the rest of the bike is so nice around it. In case you're curious, because it's a lesser known motorcycle, this is one of those that's basically a Chinese built version of the Kawasaki 650. It's just been bored out to 700 cc's-ish, and it's used in an adventure bike in a lot of Motomorini's platforms. Despite the motor being so boring, the rest of the motorcycle around it is really cool. It's got Marzocchi suspension, it's got a great dashboard, it's got really solid hardware. But the reality is a motorcycle determines a lot of its personality based off the motor that's in it. And that motor has no personality. Now we're moving on to the C tier, and the C tier are motorcycles that I consider kind of the tip of the bell curve. They excel in some things, but they're drawn back by some other stuff that keep them from truly being special. And we're starting the C tier off with the CVO Road Glide ST from Harley Davidson. There is no world in which a bike this big and this heavy should handle as well as this thing does. It also overcomes a lot of my issues with the Milwaukee 8 being kind of a boring motor by putting out more power, and that inherently makes it a little bit more lively. This motorcycle is going to be written off by a lot of people because you can't really understand how good it is unless you ride it. And again, just the hardware alone on here is the best that we've seen on one of Harley Davidson's cruising motorcycles. The real problem is the price tag on it is eye-wateringly expensive, and that causes so many people to write it off as not even a toy for like dentists. You need to be a brain surgeon, the likes of, I don't know, Dr. Strange to afford one of these. Basically, it's Tony Stark's motorcycle. At the exact opposite end of the spectrum from Harley Davidson is another Midwestern bike, the Janus Halcyon 250. Basically, you could fit, I think, we'll have to do the math on that. It's a 229cc motor, and the Harley Davidson has I think it's got the 121 in it, and that's 121 cubic inches. So how many Halcyon motors could you fit inside the displacement of the CVO Road Glide. Mario, you're gonna have to put that one on screen and educate all of us.
What number comes between 2 and 4?
25.
But that's besides the point. This bike is really kind of a goofy object. It's really expensive for what it is, but it is worth remembering that all of the painting, all the metal work, all of the leather work is done in Goshen, Indiana, or in the Amish townships around there. Sure, they get the motor from China, but the motor's basically a bulletproof little 250 that you could throw off a cliff and it will still run. Joining the Janus 250s in the C tier is the Janus 450s. Basically, it takes the entire problem of the motorcycle being too slow and gets rid of it because it's a fuel-injected 450cc single-cylinder motor. It also has rear suspension too, which is nice, but it takes the problem of the Janus being too expensive and increases it because this thing is even more pricey than the 250 is. So it's one step forward and one step back, which puts it right next to the Halcyon in C tier. Another C tier motorcycle is the Zero XE. I really love the concept of the electric dirt bike. It's also really great to see a major electric bike manufacturer start working within the 72 volt segment, as I like to call it. Basically the small mountain bike, motorcycle, dirt bike combination thing that blurs the line between, you know, a little pit bike and scooter to a full-size motorcycle. The only thing keeping it in C tier is that it's a very narrow use case motorcycle. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this thing to everybody, but for somebody like me who doesn't have a lot of public access trails and I have to go to a dirt bike park to ride off-road, it's perfect because it doesn't require a lot of maintenance. You can kind of just set it and forget it and ride it whenever you want. Next up in C tier is one that's gonna spoil one for a little bit later, but it takes everything that I know and love about Livewire's S2 platform and turns it into basically an electric Sportster. It's got really great handling if it's a little bit heavier than some of the other bikes in the S2 line because of the suspension geometry and then that bigger, taller front tire. It's got really great power delivery, and it's held back admittedly a little bit by the range. However, when I was at EICMA, I did see an S2 bike that featured DC fast charge, which has me really excited about the future of this line because at DC fast charge, you could charge the bike up in like 5 or 10 minutes. Another problem with the S2 platform is pricing. At their standard price, it's pretty expensive, but they have been running their Twist and Go sale, which is like $6,000 off a lot of these motorcycles. We'll have to see how the sales numbers look now because I think that basically like 11 or 12 grand for the bike that you're getting is a screaming deal. Next up in the C tier, we have the Thruxton RS. This one has great power, great handling, but it is uncomfortable as sin. I could not enjoy my experience riding this bike because I just wanted to die. My back was on fire, my wrists were burning. The tank is too narrow for you to really grab it with your knees and then, you know, take the weight off of your core and your wrists. Basically, if you wanna ride this bike, but you don't wanna be a sadomasochist, get yourself the Speed Twin RS. It's functionally the same motorcycle, but comfortable and enjoyable to ride. This last one in the C tier is gonna piss a lot of people off because it's such a special motorcycle, but it only does one thing really well and everything else kind of suffers as a result, and that is the Kawasaki ZH2. I struggled whether or not to put this in B or C tier because it really is kind of borderline. I don't really love riding it beyond doing big pulls on it. Think about it like this. It's what happens when you put all of your perk points in an RPG into strength and then you have like an agility check later on. You're absolutely going to fail that. And that's what the ZH2 does. It's really great at going fast, but the second you have some really technical riding, you can feel the frame flex and twist when you get on the gas, and the way that it shifts and the suspension is set up, it doesn't feel as competent as the other Hypernakeds, but no other Hypernaked chirps and flutters when you're going around a corner. So it is a very special bike. And then moving on to the B tier, this is where we start getting to motorcycles that I really want to just add to the garage, but they're held back by one or two things that keep them from being truly spectacular. We're gonna start out with one that I loved even though the YouTube algorithm didn't, and that was the Harley VR SCR Street Rod. The V-Rod is such a weird motorcycle in the history of motorcycling because Porsche helped Harley build just this absolute monster of a muscle bike, but it kind of lived in the shadow of the VMAX despite being able to handle better, and it wasn't carbureted. For my money, the Street Rod is the best iteration of the V-Rod. It's got the taller suspension, it's got the foot pegs in the right place, it's got a bigger gas tank. The only problem with the V-Rod nowadays is parts are really hard to come by. For example, on the VR SCR we gave away, the fuel pump level sensor thing didn't quite work right because Harley Davidson used this weird ultrasonic sensor, and that meant that you couldn't just get a new fuel pump. Like, you couldn't just do the toilet bowl float that works so well in just about every other gas tank. You had to specifically set it up for this bike, so even if you replaced it, you'd have to recalibrate it, and that is so dumb. And now that bike, just the fuel level, you guess, you hope it works. The irony of then moving on to the VMAX is not lost on me because this year I rode, for basically the first time, my finished 1998 Yamaha VMAX. I poured an ungodly amount of time and energy into this bike, as well as a frankly unconscionable amount of money. In fact, the project is still not done, and I'm contemplating buying another VMAX. What the fuck? And taking all my good stuff off of this one and putting it on a lower mileage version. This is a labor of love, guys. But the thing is, I can admit that this bike is an absolute death trap. It handles so badly on the stock setup, but the stuff that I've done to mine makes it actually handle like a proper motorcycle. Next up in the B tier is the Livewire Alpinista. It takes everything that I loved about the Mulholland, but it makes it handle better because it's on 17s. It's essentially an electric naked bike that you can afford. Still a bit pricey, still lacking on range, still waiting on that DC fast charge to hit the Alpinista. Once that happens, it's basically one of the best electric naked bikes out there. Next up is the Ducati X Diavel V4. Now, admittedly, I'm not a huge fan of Ducati's V4. I don't really love the way it puts on power. It feels really bad down low. It doesn't have a lot of torque, and you really have to rev it out to get to the power. But the thing is, that's exactly what this bike wants to do. It wants to be ridden, despite being a big raked out cruiser, it wants to be ridden like a super bike. And when you ride it like that, it's flawless. It's so good. That concept though is a little bit antithetical to the idea of the muscle bike because it's about leaving a red light as fast as you can and laying down rubber and having a big plume of tire smoke coming out from behind you. The bike doesn't really feel like that. But once you get it on the side of the tire, nobody cares because it's so much better than all of the other muscle bikes out there. Problem is, this one has an eye-watering price tag. So yeah, it's held back a little bit by that. Next up in the B tier is the closest we're gonna get to a Harley Davidson Bronx, probably within the next decade and a half, and that is the Harley Pan Am ST. It takes the Pan America and turns it into a street-based touring motorcycle, so think of something like the Tracer 900 or the Super Duke GT. Very similar to that style of bike. However, this is the platform that if you wanted to strip a bike down and turn it into like one of those Moto America Pan Ams like my buddy Dylan used to ride, this is the bike you want to get. I do still think price-wise it's out of reach for a lot of folks, so if they were able to take the 975, put it in this bike, remove a lot of the technology, put basic bitch suspension on there and limited rider modes and just make it an entry-level package, I think that would help out so much because honestly, the 975 motor is still a beast. Last up in the B tier is one that's also probably gonna piss people off. It is the Triumph Speed Triple RS that we are currently giving away on the channel. Look guys, this thing has great handling, great power delivery, and they run forever. I've seen these bikes get close to 50,000 miles and they're still ticking. The cult of the street triple is absolutely alive and well in 2025. If you're a track rider, it's great. If you're a canyon rider, it's great. If you're a commuter, it's missing cruise control, but otherwise it's a really awesome package. The only thing that's keeping me from putting it in A tier is I just don't love the motor. Everything else around the motorcycle is easily A or S tier, and for somebody other than me, this is easily like perfect motorcycle territory. Now in the A tier, we have basically the best performing video on the channel in recent memory, the Triumph Rocket 3. This one is an A tier simply because of how comically stupid the motor is and how silly the power delivery is. It is just a monstrous amount of torque. Just imagine if it was basically just like a short answer of describe muscle bike, and it's just bike go vroom was the answer. That's all the Rocket 3 is. And because it understood the assignment so well, it goes straight into A tier, despite the fact that, like the Diavel, it's pretty expensive. I struggled with where to put this next one, but the DRZ4 SM, the more that I think about it, the more it really is an A tier motorcycle. Yes, it is expensive, and I think if Suzuki were to knock $1,000 off the price tag, it would be perfect. But when you think about the package, it takes a bike that everybody knows and loves, makes it more reliable and easier to ride with better hardware across the entire motorcycle, with the exception of the master cylinder. They're still using the same shitty master cylinder. With a few mods, you could get one of these new DRZs to be a lot closer to a KTM 690 than the 690 guys are willing to admit. And I can say that because I'm a former 690 owner myself. Lastly, in the A tier, we have a motorcycle that if it's for you, it's S tier, but for me, it's an A tier because it's just not my style. It's the BMW M1000RR. I only got to spend about 20 minutes with this motorcycle on COTA, but it was an unbelievably eye-opening experience. It was so blisteringly fast, so capable, and so willing to just guide an idiot like me around a racetrack. The funny thing is though, it only took me about 20 minutes to realize that I have no business being on a motorcycle like this. The power is beyond my reach. The handling is world class and the tech package is sophisticated enough to support a pro racer or, like I said, a dipshit like me. It's not my kind of bike, and so that's why I'm putting it only in the A tier. However, I can totally see this being S tier, and if this is your kind of thing, this is the bike you want. Don't get anything else. Now we have the S tier, and these are the bikes that haunt my memories or my garage. So first and foremost, we have the MV Agusta Brutale 1000 RS. This was straight to S tier. I don't like inline four motorcycles. I don't like the way they make their power. I feel like they're too peaky. They're not great on the street, and this one fixed all those problems. It has a staggering, a breathtaking amount of power, 208 horsepower, but the torque is usable and fun on the street, which is not something you can say about just about any other inline four other than the ZH2. The problem is, unlike the ZH2, this thing can actually go around a corner without feeling like it wants to tear itself to shreds. Yes, this motorcycle is expensive, but it's also small batch. They're not common motorcycles. If you want to stand out from the crowd, it's worth every penny. It is truly one of the most special motorcycles I've ever ridden, period, let alone this year. Next up in the S tier is the Aprilia Tuono 660 Factory, and I get it. People think that this bike is underpowered relative to other motorcycles when you're looking at the price tag. Yeah, it's $11,500 and you can get an MT-09 for less money, but this thing is prepped. It's done right out of the factory. All you gotta do is put an exhaust and a tune on it, and you're ready to rock and roll. It will absolutely dominate any racetrack you put it on. It'll crush every single street mile that you throw at it. It's such a capable motorcycle. It's also one of the few bikes south of like 15,000 bucks that has Öhlins front and rear. Sure, your MT-09 SP has a fancy shock in the rear, but it's just got basic bitch suspension up front. I did end up selling my 660 because I needed some room in the garage, but don't let that fool you. It is an absolute weapon of a motorcycle. And if you are serious about learning how to ride a motorcycle as fast as possible, this is the motorcycle you want to be on. Last up in the S tier, we have the KTM Super Duke R Evo. Now we are sticking with the 1290 here because the deals you can get on these are through the roof. I got mine for like 10 grand and it's so much bike for the dollar. I consider it the final form of the Super Duke. Perfect tech, perfect suspension, and it's so comfortable for a guy my size. I own it, so yeah, I'm biased, but I'm a Super Duke guy through and through. It's the perfect bike for me. Plus, just the sound. The sound of the Super Duke alone. I mean, nothing beats it. And here we arrive at the bike of the year. And again, if you've followed some of my recent videos, you probably already know which one this is, and it's gonna piss a lot of people off, but I don't care because this is my list. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a bike from this year. It is the Aprilia Dorsoduro 900. It was singing my song from the second I turned it on. It is a 900cc V-twin that puts out a stupid amount of torque, even though it doesn't really rev out like the Hyper Motard. It's not as good as the Hyper Motard, but I don't care because it's just the character of the motor suits me so well. If I were you, I would expect to see a Dorsoduro 900 in the garage at some point soon. Lastly, we have a couple of honorable mentions that I wanted to throw in here. We've got the DRZ 400 SM. This one is an honorable mention because I've ridden one of these before. I just bought one again this year, and it's the perfect multi-tool motorcycle. Once you get the dual sport rims and the supermoto rims, there's nothing you can't do with one of these bikes. The aftermarket is insane. You can get them crazy cheap. And once you get them working properly, they're stone cold reliable. They're just hard to find in good running order nowadays because people beat the shit out of them. Personally, I think it's just a little bit of a fossil, and the DRZ 4 SM really is the worthy successor that I don't think I wanted to admit when I first got on it. But now that I have some separation, yeah, the DRZ 400 is kind of in the past now, and the 4SM can carry the torch. Lastly, we have two Hondas that I didn't get to ride, but Whitney got to ride this year. And we were talking a little bit earlier before I made this video. Whitney has still had the CB750 haunting her dreams. It's the one that she wants to go buy between the Hornet 750 and the 1000. She actually didn't really love the 1000. And apparently there's some issues with it consuming oil, and it's underpowered in the States. That bike is a bit of a mess, but the CB750 just seems to be right in the sweet spot, especially price-wise. I really want to get to ride one of these bikes. Maybe I can convince the folks at Honda to send one out to me. And with that, I'm gonna wrap this one up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this year. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'm really looking forward to what we got coming in 2026. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.